Ink-a-dink, 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 ink-a-dink. Wow. Okay, we're going to start, we're going to start in a couple of minutes, Basil. We're just getting everything wrapped up in the studio. Just getting things ready in the studio. Oh, hold on. Basil BuddhaCat presents. No, actually, we're not on the air yet. We're not really ready for any call-ins yet. But my goodness, you sound distressed. What's wrong? What's bothering you? Oh my goodness. Okay, Basil, we maybe should get this caller back on during the show. She says that she was told, and she checked it out, that if you take the letters in our president's name, Barack Hussein Obama, you take those letters and you get what? Oh my God. She says that, Basil, she says that if you take the letters in our president's name, Barack Hussein Obama, and take those letters and just jumble them around, rearrange the letters, you get a car bomb in USA. Shake. Now, okay, she's explaining. Yeah, she's saying the word shake, not like shake, rattle, and roll, but the word shake, as in to shake up. A car bomb in USA. Shake. And another one? Oh, she says, car bomb shake, and this is the other kind of shake, the Arabian shake. Car bomb shake sauna. And then she had a couple letters left over, so for good measure, she ended up with a couple extra A's. So she's saying she doesn't belong to AA, but I guess she's taking this as a step in, a little shout out to Alcoholics Anonymous. A car bomb shake sauna. AA. Oh. Whew. Oh. How long has this been going on, Basil? When did you tell him? Okay. Welcome to Basil BuddhaCat Presents. My name is David Stevenson. I am Basil's co-host. Center slot, Basil BuddhaCat himself. And Basil wrote out, and his handwriting's not exactly superb, and he notes that. But Basil has in the guest slot the words big government. Now, I guess that ties in with our call-in, and we'll see if we can get her back on and talk a little further about this. But a lot of people apparently, we're hearing a lot of fear about big government, specifically from most often Tea Party members, but I think that's kind of a generic concern, is the size of government and government's intrusiveness. You hear that from all across the political spectrum, and little different flavors of big government. Occasionally, okay, Basil, yeah, okay. Basil's gonna explain, and I'll translate for him. Basil says that he's been hearing through the guests and the call-ins for his guests so far in the show, Sarah Palin most recently. We've had Newt Gingrich. We've had Mitt Romney. We've had Ron Paul. And Basil notes that probably heard more of it from Ron Paul and his supporters than any of the others. And also, you're right, Basil. Probably from our first guest, Michelle Bachmann, who was the guest on Basil's 2 opening shows. But Basil says that a lot of complaints, a lot of concern, a lot of fear about big government. What do you want? Oh, okay. Okay, Basil says we need to bring out the next guest, he says. Okay. You sure it's back here? Okay. 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 Oh, pardon me. Pardon me. Large corporations. Okay. Now, Basil, you want to explain again and I'll interpret. Okay. Basil says that he's saying that from the perspective that he takes, he's more concerned about large corporations, corporate influence in politics, corporations. Okay, yeah, Basil, I'll have some agreement with you on that, Basil. He says that he's seen representations of the American flag around recently that make sense to him, that rather than having, in the place of the 50 stars in the flag, those stars contain inside of them, over them, the names of multinational corporations. And he thinks that's very telling. He says that, okay, he's saying that that's very conspicuous that large corporations have, particularly through the Supreme Court decision in 2010, the Supreme Court decision which essentially went way above and beyond what the plaintiff, Citizens United, was looking for, went way beyond that, and in fact spoke of corporations having the same rights as individuals. The Supreme Court basically granted corporations the same rights as individuals in terms of being able to put their word out there, get their message out there, speak to issues, although those issues certainly are emblematic of certain candidates, and you see a lot of it so far from candidate Mitt Romney, who's got his own what's called a super PAC. Super PAC being a large political action committee that's run by individuals that don't need to identify themselves as to who they are. They don't need to identify where their funds come from, and they can basically say whatever they want in whatever unlimited quantities of information on their own behalf, and limited only by the amount of money that they have. Whereas individuals don't have that kind of, they can speak through funding those candidates or corporations or super PACs, or they can speak through their limited donations, but they can't speak with the kind of authority and the kind of weightiness that the super PACs can. Now, Basil, you heard the call-in that we had about the woman who had heard and in her own mind's eye had confirmed that if you take the letters in the name of our president, Barack Hussein Obama, and rearrange those letters, you get some very striking, some very telling, some very frightening thoughts. Now, okay, you want me to flip again? Okay, I'll come around to you this time. Now, underneath this is our the guest that you really wanted to get to, the guest that I'm saying that the guest that he is extremely concerned about, and he thinks that everyone should be concerned about in their lives is, okay, I understand now. Fear. Now, are you using, well, tell me, and I'll pass it on to the audience. And Basil says that large corporations use their message essentially to create an atmosphere of fear. And people have fear of, on our side, Basil and my side of the equation, are more can be more fearful of large corporations, certainly. People on other sides and people generically across the political spectrum have a fear of big government. So big government, large corporations. What are you getting at, Basil? What's your overarching theme for our discussion tonight? And then again, I'm presuming we'll do another show Sunday morning that, as Basil has noted and Basil has done in the shows we've had on so far, he likes to spend Sunday morning show, he likes to focus on the religious aspects of life, of political life, but life in general. Okay, Basil's saying that fear is the overarching guest. And your handwriting's a little bit better on fear, Basil, than it was on big government and large corporations. Okay, he says, well, bigger letters, it's a little easier for him to do the bigger letters. Okay, Basil, okay. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who's not amongst Basil's top presidents in Basil's Presidential Hall of Fame. Of course, Basil's a very big fan of the other Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, because of his environmental work, his protection of land, it's his corporate monolithic corporate busting, keeping corporations in check and preventing them from becoming more powerful and more unwieldy. But his environmental work, Basil is very, very fond of Teddy Roosevelt. Also very fond of a more recent president, Dwight Eisenhower. And that's not because of his middle name, is it? No, Basil says, no. Basil says, are you kidding? David, it's just a name. Okay, so he says Dwight David Eisenhower. Dwight Eisenhower is, in fact, one of perhaps near, if not at the top of Basil's list of most accomplished presidents. Now, he's not really noted for a lot of specific accomplishments, but during the Eisenhower administration, a couple of important points to note. The top tax rate was over 90%. Now, that doesn't mean that anyone paid 90% in taxes, because of course you have set-offs and deductions when you do your taxes. But at the very least, Basil is fond of the fact that you start from that high point and put a strong burden on the wealthiest individuals and on corporations to pay a higher share of taxes than middle class people do. And says that nowadays you have corporations paying almost no tax. They pay property tax on a local level, but in many cases they can get local municipalities and or state governments to give them incredible tax abatements where they pay very little tax in order to settle inside a state or inside a certain municipality. And they get a lot of tax write-offs there. They get a lot of tax abatements. But in terms of income tax, pay practically nothing. Okay. And the folks that are the wealthiest Americans have a lot of ways of shielding their income, so they pay at a lower tax rate than middle-class folks who don't have those same vehicles in place, those same ways of reducing their own income tax to the federal government. And certainly they pay, everyone pays sales tax. There's a level playing field there, but again, it favors the wealthy because the wealthy can negotiate terms and conditions that helps them mitigate some of the cost of buying things. If they buy in large quantities, they can mitigate some of the cost, therefore mitigating some of the tax burden on themselves in terms of sales tax. But he says that he's really very much fed up with folks that pay a very low tax rate. That in fact, folks that work in a lot of jobs, folks that are on Wall Street, folks that are paid big bucks for their work, where Basil says, in fact, they don't make anything. They don't really perform any particular function. They don't particularly benefit society, except they're money shufflers. Now, he says that a lot of them, in fact, are paid in stock options. And after a period of time, stock options are taxed at capital gains, the capital gains rate, which is 15%. That's a flat capital gains rate. So many people are paying only, in essence, 15% tax on their income before they begin their deduction process. And, in fact, he says that, I wouldn't put it, okay, these are Basil's words, these are not my words, these are Basil's words. They may, in fact, be fear's words, too, because there's a lot of fear about this, that these folks just basically are sucking off the teat of other taxpayers. These folks force the government to go into deficit further and further, which, of course, is a concern. These individuals are exempt from paying capital gains, Basil. They're exempt from paying Social Security tax on everything beyond about the $100,000 threshold. They don't have that. They don't have to pay any higher amount of tax toward Medicare, which is still solvent, but is since they capped Medicare, it's been heading toward not toward oblivion, but it's heading toward a very tenuous place where one day there won't be there'll be more money going out in terms of Social Security payments than there is coming in. Now, so this overarching notion of fear, Basil. Do you see this and do you understand this? As Basil says, he knows exactly where I'm going with that, and in fact, yes, he understands people's concern about big government. He understands their fear about big government, although he thinks that it's not, in fact, so much a fear of big government. It's not exactly big government that's the biggest concern. It's more so large corporations are a major concern, or should be a major concern of everyone. Now, when you say everyone, Basil, who do you mean by that? Do you mean, okay, he says he means from one side of the equation you see what people that define themselves as being Tea Party members, Tea Party patriots. And from the other side, he sees the group that is very similar in terms of being very vocal and getting out and getting in the public eye, and that's Occupy Wall Street. And not just Occupy, obviously, Wall Street, but there are Occupy Wall Street movements in literally thousands of different American locations, and again, thousands and thousands more worldwide. So it's a worldwide push from people who are fearful of large corporations, perhaps fearful about the extent of the reach out of their own particular, the government that each individual lives under. So Basil says that fear is the overarching problem, and now he's going to reach in with a reference to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who in a very famous speech said that we have nothing to fear but fear itself. Okay, where do you want to take the conversation from here, Basil? Okay, Basil says that he recognizes that statement, and that's really what he thinks, that people should unite across party lines, across all reaches of society. Would that include the 1%? The people that are referred to as the 1%, Basil? Basil's ears are his ears flicked and his whiskers are twitching, and he says, well, a lot of them, particularly people like Warren Buffett, particularly people like Warren Buffett, our understanding of the problem, understanding their own particular that they get way too much in the way of handouts from government. Okay, way too much. They get way too much slack in terms of what they pay. Way too much handouts in terms of government, in terms of special considerations for large corporations. But he says that I'm going to have to hold on. You back up a second there. I have to translate a little bit here because, as you know, Basil doesn't speak English, and he says that's not his fault. It's the fault of the audience who don't speak not Cantonese, which Basil learned through friending a good friend of Progressive Soup, John Kusumi, the head of the Chinese democracy movement, and then subsequently friending him on Facebook and getting friend suggestions from other friends of John whose names are identified in Chinese characters and who speak Cantonese. So Basil devised a variation of Cantonese, which he calls Catanese. Okay, Basil speaks Catanese. Because I've had to, in order to communicate with him, I've learned the rudimentary structure of Catanese, and therefore I'm Basil's no. I am your co-host, and I am your interpreter, and I think that you ought to be. Okay, he says, yeah, he's just kidding, with a flick of the whisker and a wink. So Basil says that Basil believes that this guy over here to his right, fear, and the guy could be to his right, the guy could be to his left, the guy could be facing right in at him. Fear is the enemy, and folks should unite, stop being afraid, and perhaps consider the possibility that it's not just big government, that it's not just large corporations, but the problem is when big government and large corporations become one, when the lines blur between a very small segment of the governed corporations and the government itself. And Basil says that, says that fear, in fact, is the enemy. We have to learn to. Now, Basil, you almost hit on the trifecta there, because as you've noted on other shows, there's a fellow that was the head honcho or in charge of a little country called Italy, which was part of the Axis along with Nazi Germany and Japan. That Mussolini, who was a fascist, in fact, coined the term fascism. He defined fascism as a marriage between corporations, large corporations, government, and religion. Okay, Basil says he's going to get to religion in the Sunday morning show. We'll get back to religion because Basil wants to focus on religion more principally. Can you give us a little taste of where you're going? Any religion in general? Any particular religions that we're going to deal with? And Basil says yes, of course, the ones you might expect. But he says that it's not just the fact that the religions are caught up and operating as corporations in a sense, using their multinational power and influence to affect government and to control government. But yeah. He says that there are many ways in which large religious organizations have become really, in fact, almost the antithesis of as the audience knows, Basil, as am I, are religiously we consider ourselves to be devout Christians, and philosophically we consider ourselves to be Buddhists philosophically, and we've been down this discussion before, Basil. So I won't go there to a great extent, but point being that the teachings of Buddha and the teachings of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, is very much very similar in nature. Very now, Basil, have you had chance, or do you expect to have chance this coming October, November, when the Dalai Lama comes to Danbury to speak? Do you have expectations of getting an opportunity to meet the Dalai Lama? Basil says certainly like to have him on the show, but that's to be determined. That's something that Basil would very much like. Okay, hold on. Basil BuddhaCat presents. Oh, okay. Okay, our earlier caller in. Okay, can you identify yourself? Will you identify yourself to our audience? Because I'm actually explaining for you the nature of our discussion. Okay, she says she's got a homework assignment for the audience, because she says she's been through this reshuffling of letters in Barack Hussein Obama. She's got a homework assignment for us, Basil, and the audience, and that's to take the letters in Dalai Lama, D-A-L-A-I, L-A-M-A, and see what we can come up with for alternate words. Okay, we're going to have to, okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate your call. And thank you, you still there? Okay, and also thank you for the level of trepidation in the caller-in's voice is down substantially. She's thinking about what we're talking about here. Okay, we're going to have to call it a show, wrap it up. This is our Friday night 7 p.m. show, and we're going to pick up again Sunday morning and put a little bit more religious touch on it. This has been Basil BuddhaCat Presents. I'm David Stevenson, Basil's co-host and interpreter. Basil BuddhaCat center slot, and we've had with us on the show, we've had large corporations represented, big government represented, and the overarching thought about fear of big government and of large corporations. That's been the point of our discussion. We'll be back Sunday morning to continue it. Thanks. It's been Basil BuddhaCat Presents. Good evening. They say they'd rob your grandma blind on Wall Street, fritter her away her Medicare on Wall Street. And Pharma Oil and their pet fox don't care if she lives in a box, so long as they wear platinum jocks on Wall Street, Meow.